Hi, this is Pastor Steve Webb of the Church of the Nazarene. When I was an early teen, Boy Scouts was an important part of my life. I camped out overnight, at least one night, nearly every month of the year, even in deep snow and cold. After a couple of years, I was a little older, not much, but a little older than the new boys coming into the troop, and they really didn't know much about how to camp, so I learned a little bit about leadership too, as I shared all the tricks with them. It was a lot of fun, so I kept going for several years. You know, the motto of the Boy Scouts is, be prepared. That is an important idea, believe it or not. For example, if you're going to hike into a campsite in the snow, you need to bring the right gear. A good sleeping bag, sure, but did you know that what you put under it is just as important? I mean, you'll be sleeping on what is essentially a giant ice cube. And where you set up your camp matters, and knowing how to get a fire going, what to do if you get wet, how to find your way back home, how to safely use a knife, what's some basic first aid if you get hurt. There's a lot to know and some basic gear to bring along just to be prepared. Where I grew up, you had to prepare to last overnight if your car got stuck in the snow. You put good winter tires on. You probably have a couple of bags of sand in the trunk for weight to get better traction and an extra blanket folded up in the back seat. I always had a snow shovel in my trunk too, in case I slid off the road and had to dig my way out. Never let your gas tank get low in case you need to idle the engine for warmth as you wait for help to arrive. You know, the desert is unforgiving too. If you're going to hike in Joshua Tree National Monument, you're going to need a lot more water than you might think if you've never done this before. And you must protect your skin from the sun. It can kill you. Plus, there's plants that can hurt you. There are reptiles that can hurt you, and scorpions and spiders to sting and bite. It probably won't happen, but do you know what to do if you're bitten? Yes, be prepared. Well, all of those things I just mentioned are actually quite manageable risks. You just need to make it a point to be prepared, right? But I can tell you that most people aren't well prepared for the big one, death. Have you thought about what will happen to your kids if their parents die in a car accident? Who will care for them? Do you have enough insurance to provide for them until they're on their own? If you're retired now, do you have enough insurance or savings to at least cover your funeral expenses? You don't want your spouse to lose the house because they can't pay to take care of your body, right? And do you have a will so that an uncaring legal system does what you want? Look, be prepared. What I've been queuing up here is the idea that being prepared in life is more of an attitude or a lifestyle than an action plan. It's about thinking things through before you commit to something. It's about being informed so you know what to do to minimize risk before it happens and to minimize the severity of an emergency if it occurs. It's about taking care of maintenance in advance instead of letting things break. It's about planning for the worst thing, the thing that is certain to happen before it arrives. It's about being mindful and intentional so that you are ready for the things that will surprise you. You know, we all know in our heads, intellectually, that everyone is going to die someday. We know that in our minds, but few people make peace with the idea. We acknowledge it in our rational minds, but we protect our deeper selves, our subconscious selves, by just avoiding the subject. Somebody once said that the longest 12 inches in the universe is the distance from your head to your heart. And this is what I'm talking about. It is one thing to know something. It is another thing to internalize it and make it part of your worldview and have it influence the way that you handle your life. For most of us, it is a shock when someone we know dies. It doesn't have to be someone we know personally. If your favorite musician or an actor on your favorite TV show dies, it can be a strain on you. But if you lose a loved one, it is shocking and painful. You find yourself saying things like, I just talked to them this morning on the phone, because daily routine doesn't prepare us for anything like this. We are never ready psychologically for death when it happens. You know, Jesus had a lot to say about this business. One of his lessons is about the thief in the night. He said if you knew what time someone was going to break into your house, well, you'd be ready and waiting. You would meet him at the door. But the whole point of that little story is that you don't know, you can't know when someone might break in. So we lock our doors. We have lights on outside next to both doors. Maybe a security system in the house, and we have phones so we can call for help. And maybe you have a baseball bat under your bed. I do. We prepare. Well, today I want to briefly return to a story of Jesus that I shared a little bit of before and show you how Jesus expanded on that story after it happened. It goes like this. As they were leaving the temple one day, Jesus told the apostles that someday the temple would be utterly destroyed. The stones of the building would be separated one from another. The very thought of the destruction of the temple was terrible in their minds. So later, Jesus sat on the Mount of Olives, and his disciples came to him privately. And they said, "Tell us, when will all this happen? What sign will signal your return and the end of the world?" From the way they asked the question, they seem to think that the temple will be destroyed at the end of the world. But Jesus doesn't actually say that. It actually ends up being destroyed in 70 AD. He just says that in the future lots of bad things will happen. But don't let despair and discouragement cause you to fall away from faith. These are all just birth pains as something new is being born. Jesus concludes this part of his answer to the apostles with a promise. He says, "Because of the increase of wickedness, the love of most will grow cold. But the one who stands firm to the end will be saved." And he never really answers their question about how to know when that end is near. But that isn't all he said. He kept preaching, and his real intention is made clear in the following. Listen to this from Matthew chapter 24. "No one knows when the end will be, not the angels in heaven, not even me, but only God the Father." Well, okay, the grand plan is known only to God the Father. Already, there's something here that's shocking to hear. Jesus doesn't know when? I thought he was God. Well, this little problem of why he doesn't know is plainly explained in the book of Philippians chapter 2. Well, that's a chat for another day, but let me explain here that we believe Jesus was both completely God and completely human at the same time. This could only work because, as God, he had the power to choose to live completely human. He did this to show us that a human being that is completely sinless, as he was, can be completely at one with the Holy Spirit, as he was, and all the power of God is then at his disposal. But in lowering himself to being human, the precise timeline of the end was not known to him. That should sound familiar. We know we are going to die, but we don't know when. I hope all that helps to understand that comment. All right, after that long explanation, let's go back to what Jesus was preaching. He was saying, "When the Son of Man comes, it will be like the days of Noah's flood." People were just living their lives right up to the day Noah entered the ark. They knew nothing about what would happen until the floodwaters came and took them all away. And that is how it will be at the coming of the Son of Man. 2 men will be in the field. One will be taken and the other left. 2 women will be grinding with a hand mill. One will be taken and the other left. Now let me break in here. Jesus says it will be a surprise when the end comes. Further, he says there will be 2 groups of people, one taken and one left behind. I know that I want to be in the group that goes with the Son of Man, don't you? Reading on, Jesus talks about exactly that. He says, "Therefore keep watch, because you do not know on what day your Lord will come. But understand this. If the owner of the house had known at what time of night the thief was coming, he would have kept watch and would not have left his house to be broken into. So you also must be ready, because the Son of Man will come at an hour when you do not expect him." Well, and there it is. When Jesus reveals his real intention, you won't know when the end will be. You can't just meet the thief at the door, so you have to be prepared if you want to be on the right side of that great division into two groups. Our first glimpse of what it means to be ready comes in the next statement, which is aimed at church leaders. Leaders like the apostles are being trained to be. He asks, who is the faithful leader that the master of the house can trust while he's away? Notice that Jesus himself is soon going away and will one day return. He's the master. He's asking, which of you can I trust? He says that the servant who's left in charge, that is taking care of the rest of the house when the master returns, will be richly rewarded with all of the master's possessions. But if that one is taking advantage of everyone else and living an indulgent life, the master will, and I quote, cut him down and send him to the place where the hypocrites are, where there is weeping and gnashing of teeth. Well, that sounds like one side of the great divide goes to God's house, and the other side goes to the other place. I gotta say, as a pastor, I take this special warning to leaders very seriously. Well, Jesus still hasn't finished his answer. It seems this topic is very important to him. He tells them a parable about 10 bridesmaids. Now, in the parable, Jesus says that at the end of time, the kingdom of heaven is like 10 bridesmaids waiting for the bridegroom's arrival. As they wait, it starts to get dark, but 5 of the maids have oil for their lamps and 5 don't. The wise ones with oil tell the foolish ones they better go buy oil. I'll tell you now that the oil represents living prepared, living faithfully. While the 5 foolish maids run out to get some oil, the groom comes, and they all go into the wedding feast together. The doors are shut, and the 5 foolish maids are left on the outside when they return. Do you see it? The great divide? It sounds like one side of the great divide goes to God's house, and the other side goes, well, the other place. I can't emphasize this enough. Godly living is not a sprint. It's not even a marathon. It is a journey with a destination. If you stay faithful to the end, you'll get there. And you will stay faithful if you are mindful and intentional, always preparing yourself to overcome the inevitable challenges of life. I believe God set things up this way because he intends to walk that lonesome valley with you. It is almost incomprehensible, but true, that the God of creation, the God of eternity, is interested in you and wants to share your life with you. That's the deal. And at the end of the journey, those who walked with God join him in a wedding feast. And those who didn't want to walk that way won't have to bear his holy presence for eternity. They will be locked outside. This morning, look, if you're already a believer, I'm glad, but don't spend all your Bible study on the book of Revelations and trying to understand what's going to happen at the end and all that. I know everybody wants to know all about the end of time, but Jesus says you can't really know it. Instead, focus your study on the whole Bible so that you can know God's plan and you can follow it and walk in the light as he is in the light and have fellowship one with another. That's called being prepared, being ready. And look, if you haven't made a commitment to God yet, please consider it carefully. I know this. You'll be glad you did. God bless you.